Well, good morning. My name is Tom. I come to you from the Rustic log cabin in northern Maine. Welcome to my cabin today. Pour yourself a cup of coffee. Sit down at my table. I've got the wood stove going over here in the cabin. Nice and warm now. It was chilly this morning when I got up. It was 28 degrees in here. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. Is acclimation to the cold and making yourself be part of the cold. So I got a few thoughts and theories on it. Probably right along with everything else that's outside of the box. But it works for me and I wanted to share it with you. But meantime, this is actually day 4. Going to talk about cold, living with cold, and we're going to talk about my fish house this morning. I am on day 4 of the new fish house build. It's completely finished now as far as all framed up. The interior is done. I've made it YouTube friendly so I can set cameras up and all of that. That was the whole idea about building a new fish house. Plus I've got some other spots on the lake that I want to check out. But this one is set up for cameras and my tablet so that I can do live stream from the fish house, as long as the cellular service will cooperate. I got it rolled over right now out in the garage. I mean, out in the yard. Yeah, I call it the garage. I ain't never built a fish house in a garage yet. And it seems like I always build them in 1st of January and December too, for whatever reason. I don't know how many this makes as far as I've built over my lifetime, but it's a bunch. I wouldn't be surprised if I built at least a dozen of them. The design that I have now is one I come up with about 10 years ago, and I won't switch from this design. It is durable. The last fish house I built was 10 years ago. I've been using it ever since. I've got no problems with it. It's small, it's compact, it's warm, you name it. It's got all the amenities that I need. All I do is pull up with my snowmobile, stop with the fish house, open the door, and I'm fishing. I don't have to mess around with setting up a fish house and all that. That's my biggest complaint with all them folding plastic ones. That and they're cold. I had 2 of them actually. I got one that I've only used once, and the other one I used a couple of times. I never was so cold in my life. I spent a whole night in there, the big one, with a buddy heater. I could not warm that fish house up. Plus, setting right on the cold ice doesn't help. And whatever heat you do, the ice turns to water if you're there for several hours. Like if you're there all night, I was there all night. So I don't use them. I don't care how many good reviews you see on them. I think they're the coldest, unforgiving fish house that you can put out on the ice. Especially in the month of February. They probably work good. January and February is cold. They probably work great in March when you don't really need a fish house anyways. In March, the sun rays are higher, stronger. So March is a warm time of year to ice fish anyways. So if that's the only time that fish house is any good, then that's not very good at all where I come from. Well, we talked about that. Now what I want to talk about is acclimation to the cold. What do I mean by that? At 7 o'clock at night, I let the fire in this cabin go out. I stop fixing it at 7 o'clock. So by 9 o'clock, the stove is out. And when I get up in the morning, the inside temperature of this cabin is around 30 degrees. This morning it was 28. But you know you've done it a lot when it doesn't feel that bad. That's what I mean by acclimation to the cold. I'm outdoors all day long. I was a builder my whole life. Built houses, camps, cottages, and a lot of that stuff was done in the wintertime where you'd be outside from 6 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock at night building these things. So you learn how to dress, that's one thing, but I mean, if it's below zero, you're still out there working. And I work with no gloves, and basically I work with no coat. I have a vest that I wear, a Carhartt vest that I've been wearing. I still wear it. That's about basically how I dress in the wintertime, especially for work, because the Carhartt vest made it so you could still work. But you know, if you spend your whole life in a house like we do nowadays, modern man, you keep your house at 70 degrees day and night. Most people do, I would imagine. So your body gets acclimated to that 70 degrees. Now let's say if you kept your house at 60 degrees, your body would acclimate to 60 degrees. And then when you go to somebody else's house, you sweat like a banshee because you're used to 60 degrees. My home where I live, we set the thermostat at 57 degrees. That's our top temperature. And at night when we go to bed, we turn it down to 54 degrees. So we're accustomed to that. That's how we live. That's, for me, I spend so much time outside that if you had the thermostat higher than that, I mean, I'm extremely uncomfortable. When I go to my daughter's house, they keep the thermostat fairly high. I'm extremely uncomfortable because I have taught my body how to be comfortable at less than 60 degrees. And I do that because I spend so much time up here out in the bush. If my body's acclimated for it's too early in the morning, maybe I need another sip of coffee. If my body is used to 70 degrees 24/7, when I step out of this camp into 20 below zero, I'm going to have culture shock, you know, and I'm going to want to come right back in this cabin and not go back out there. So by letting the fire go out, acclimating my body to, like I said, when I get up in the morning, it's about 28 degrees. I'm snug as a bug in a rug in my bed at night, all night. I have homemade blankets. My daughter made me some tie blankets years ago. So they're kind of like a felt, and they're double layer felt. So they're extremely warm and extremely comfortable. So right now on my bed, I have one quilt. I have two of those tie blankets. And then I have a really soft blanket. It's kind of like if you'd call a chamois sheet, but this isn't a chamois sheet. This is just a comfortable blanket that I use instead of a sheet. So I have one under me, one over me. Underneath the bottom layer, I have a wool blanket. So that insulates the bottom of me. Then all these other blankets are on top. That's my sleep system here at the cabin. So I can get up and have it be zero in this cabin, and that bed will be snug as a bug in a rug. That's just the way it is. And I don't sleep with any clothes. I sleep in the buff. Sorry, but if I was to sleep in sweatpants or jammies or anything like that, I would be too hot, be too uncomfortable. The only bummer is in the morning time when you lay there in that bed, like I said, snug as a bug in a rug. But you lay there in that bed, and you got to get up. and like I said, under them blankets, it's got to be 70 degrees. I mean, snug as a bug in a rug in there. So, but you got to get up. The first thing I do is turn on the coffee pot over there. I have the coffee pot always set up the night before. So all I got to do is climb out of bed, turn on the propane gas, and my coffee's perking. And then, so that's my coffee going. And then the next thing I do is get dressed. You get dressed in the morning. I put on sweatpants in the morning time, and I put on a long john top. Not a long john. Yeah, it is. It's that camel long john top that you've seen me in. And I put on a good pair of wool socks. And then by the time the coffee is done perking, the cabin will be 60 degrees. I have my kindlings always in here. I have one big armload of wood that sits on the floor right directly in front of the wood stove. And that I bring in the day before. So that's been sitting in here the day before, getting all nice and warm and dry and all that. So when I get up in the morning, I lay in my fire tinder and get my fire going. And like I said, by the time the coffee is done perking, the cabin is 60 degrees. But right now we're pushing closer to 70. So I'm warm. But that's what and then I won't fix it again. This fire will go out now until tonight at supper time. Because I'm working outside, so I really don't need to. There's nothing in here I need to keep the place 70 degrees for. So rather than fix the fire all day, I don't. I let it go out, and then when I'm done working outside this evening, I will come in, same routine, get the fire built. Normally what I do is I build the fire so that it's going, and at that point I go out and I get my firewood from the woodshed. I haul up one big sled full every evening, and I have a fire wood box ring out on the porch. I'm sure you've seen it in the videos, but I'll fill that up with that sled. I keep that covered with a small tarp so that the snow will stay off it, and that's where my wood pile is for the wood stove that's in here in the cabin. But maybe you ought to think about, if you want to spend a lot of time outdoors, maybe you ought to think about acclimating your body to a cooler temperature in your home, so that when you do go outside, you're not as uncomfortable. I can say that because I see a lot of people that are uncomfortable when it starts to get cold. And when you work outside your whole life and play outside, the last thing you want to do is be uncomfortable outside. You know, and even like my clothes that I wear, I'm not layered up with lots of layers like most people would be. But they have to be because of the way that they've acclimated themselves to a warmer temperature. It's just like if I was to go down south in the hot temperatures, I'm probably pretty sure them people have learned tricks and tips on how to live with heat, like I've learned to live with cold. If I went to Florida, I got one viewer, CLC, she said her air conditioner was on the other day. And I was thinking, man, I don't even think about air conditioning this time of year. But she's obviously, and other people have obviously learned how to live in the temperatures where they live, just like people out in the desert. If I went to the desert, I'm sure I would be in big trouble, because I'm sure there is tips and tricks to living around a desert that I have never thought of or ever been a part of, just like coming up here. If a person from the desert came up here in the dead of winter, they would be in big trouble, because there's things you need to know before you venture out into the bush around this cabin or out onto the lake that I go to. Well, I hope you had a good cup of coffee. Wayne, I hope you got a coffee, and I hope you're watching this. Yellow Chuck's been eating meatloaf this week. He described the same kind of meatloaf that I made the other night. The only thing he did different was he sauteed the onions and peppers. And that doesn't sound too bad either. Well, I'm going to get my day going. If you like this video and you like stuff like this, throw me a bone, hit the subscribe button, and definitely hit the like button. I am desperately trying to get to 100 likes on a video. Haven't done it yet. I would like to see what happens when we hit 100. Maybe there's another perk from YouTube that I can enjoy. So I will see you in the next video, and you have a great day.